Hey, it's another Saturday afternoon and I'm here to do another live video. I am super excited about this topic, and yet it's a really tough one. I call this video Help! My child just told me they've been exposed to pornography. What do I do? Okay, so first of all, I want to tell you a couple of stories. Sadly, this is not uncommon. Did you know that the average age of exposure to hardcore pornography in today's society is 8 years old? This is not something that happens when people are adults. This is not a late teenager kind of thing. This is something that happens to average kids in loving, healthy, protective homes. This is not something that you can guarantee that isn't going to happen to your kid just because you have been really careful with TV, you don't let them have unlimited internet access, you have your computer in the kitchen where nobody's gonna see it or nobody's gonna be able to sneak it off, you don't let them have TVs in their bedrooms. I mean, if you do all those things, the odds are they're gonna be exposed even earlier, but it is, I don't want to be a downer, but it is practically impossible in today's world to guarantee that your child will make it to the age of 18 where they are no longer a minor without ever being accidentally or intentionally exposed to some kind of full-on pornography. So the question is not how do we run off into the middle of nowhere and keep our children from ever seeing things that they don't have the emotional tools and the mature equipping to handle, and instead, how do we need to shift the conversation? How do we, as parents who want to protect our children, and grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins and whoever, how do we help our kids have the tools to handle exposure to things that they should never ever be burdened with seeing, but that are very likely to happen to them in today's world? Okay, so I'm gonna stop right here. I have 2 stories to tell you, and then I have a few practical tips that you can do in case this has already happened. Now, I've already got a video about how to start the conversation if that hasn't happened in your family yet, and I will add that link to that video in the thingy. Oh my word, I can't think of the description to this one. Yeah, it's really hot in here. I'm going on 2 weeks without AC in my house, y'all, so forgive me. And if I, move my hair a little bit, don't leave me yelling comments about hair hating, okay? It's hot. Anyway, if you are watching right now, before I tell you 2 stories, please like this, share this, and drop a comment, repost it on your page, because this is such an important message that so many people need to hear. So please like it and share it and drop me a comment that just says, I'm watching, I'm here, because that really helps this to go out to as many people as possible. So 2 stories. A couple of months ago, I got a message from one of my dear friends whose kids are just a little bit older than mine, and her child, oldest child, 10 years old, had just been exposed to straight up porn in church. How does that happen, you ask? Well, this is a terrific family with a lot of checks and balances in place. They don't let their kids have unlimited access to devices. Their kids don't even have their own devices. And so here they are sitting at church. Mom is up helping with something that needs to be done. I think she's a deaconess that day or something. Dad is in the AV loft, and he is keeping an eye on the kids who are right there, line of sight, sitting with a group of friends. 10-year-old boy, other little boys. One of those kids, guess what? He has a Wi-Fi enabled or internet enabled tablet. And he's sitting there, 4 or 5 little boys in a row, all around age 9 to 11, and he searches hardcore pornography and he sticks it in his friends' faces. And that, my friends, is how my girlfriend's son first got his exposure to porn. Now, I tell that not to throw her under the bus or anything horrible like that. She and I have had these conversations, and she and her husband were able to step in immediately and do intentional damage control and speak to the other parents and deal with it together as a family. And they'd already been having conversations with their son to prep him for having the emotional tools to deal with exposure to completely inappropriate sexual things because of the world we live in. So they were actually as terrible and horrifying and infuriating as that is for a parent, they were in a really good place to deal with that. Now, let me tell you another story. This is one that I just got this week. So after the video that I did 2 weekends ago about the predator at church, or assumed predator at church, I got this message just a few days ago. Hi, you don't know me, but I've been following your Facebook page. I need some advice and thought, and I know that you deal with abuse and counseling. Can I please ask you some questions? I've barely slept all night. My son is 9, and he came to me last night crying because he had seen naked people doing things on his grandpa's phone. I got the impression he'd been watching stuff on the internet. He wished he never saw it, and now he feels like his life is ruined. How do I help my child? We homeschool. We don't let our kids have iPads. Our kids don't play with our phones. We've been hyper aware, trying to protect our children. And now my oldest child has been exposed to this, and he's dealing with the fallout, and he feels like his life is over, and he's never going to be able to be washed clean again. And so what do I do? All right, so here are practical tips to help you. If this has already happened to you, here's practical tips to be able to act on it. If this has not yet happened to you, then these are things you can do to stay alert and stay aware and open those lines of communication with your kids so that this is not blindsiding you at some point when it happens. And if you're enjoying this, please like it and share it so that others can watch too. So number 1, this is what I wrote back to that mama. Good for you for taking precautions and being so vigilant. You're a great mama, and this exposure was inevitable at some age. Here's the most important thing. If and when your children or your child is exposed to sexually inappropriate content in today's world, that does not mean you have failed them. What means is that what you do next is super, super important. And that leads me to number 2. In this particular situation, in both of those stories I told you, the children came and immediately told their parents, which means they realized it was wrong. They already had an open, trusting relationship with the parents, and the parents had already been doing some kind of education on some level so that the child felt open and free and able to come talk to the mom and dad. That is best case scenario. Now, in this second situation, the second story I told you with the 9-year-old, the 9-year-old hadn't even had a sex talk yet, hadn't had that education from mom and dad. So now they are actively working to kind of play catch up on that so that they can give their son a foundation of good, biblical, healthy understanding of sex so that the pornography exposure isn't his only understanding of what sexuality is all about. Because if you do one without the other, I mean, if they're looking at porn and they're not getting a balancing biblical picture of sex, then their sex education is going to be the porn, and that is just a worst case scenario right there. So, number 3, your next job as a parent is A, to tell him and help him or her realize that this exposure does not ruin their life, because life is made up of thousands of choices every day, and they still have the freedom to choose what they're going to do with what they were just exposed to. B, give them tools for dealing with leftover pictures that are in their mind and thoughts that may now be coming, as well as any future times that they may see things they know are not safe and good. Practical tools are in, I highly recommend books like Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and I have a blog post, which I will link to in the description of this, that talks about that. It's sarahmcdougall.com/sex, and that is a list of biblical sex education and porn-proofing books for children ranging from ages, starting as young as age 2 all the way up into teens. So get those tools, and then C, that's A, help them realize exposure does not ruin their life, because life is made up of choices and you have all the choices left ahead of you to change what happened with the choices behind you. 2, Give them tools for changing their thoughts and dealing with any residual pictures or images that are left in their mind that will be making an impact on them. And give them a plan for how to react next time they see something inappropriate, so that they feel that they have a sense of being in control of their own thoughts and their eyes and what they are looking at and seeing if it ever happens again. Last but not least on this one, stop blaming yourself. Blaming yourself as a parent for somehow allowing it to happen is counterproductive. You may not even realize it, but if this has happened to you on some level, you're saying to yourself, oh my goodness, I failed my kid, I failed to protect my child, and that's not going to get you anywhere. That's only going to have you beating yourself up and then projecting that incredible sense of guilt onto your child so that they feel like this really has ruined their life, because otherwise mom and dad wouldn't be a complete mess about it. So stop blaming yourself, because what matters now is not what already happened, it's what you do from here on out. Number 4, if your child was exposed while on someone else's watch or using someone else's device, then you need to address the issue with that person. In story number 1 that I told at the beginning, that would be the parents of the other boy who brought the tablet to church and started showing porn to all of his friends. In story number 2, that would be having the very uncomfortable conversation with grandma and grandpa, because at this point, that means grandpa's got a porn problem. Very likely, 99% possibility, grandpa's got a pornography addiction. And somehow, on his phone, these things have been there for 9-year-old grandson. That's not going to be a fun conversation to have with grandpa. That's not going to be a fun conversation to have with grandma. And I should probably do a whole different video on how to address those kind of things. I'm not going to get into that today. But you have to go to the source of where this was discovered so that you can deal with that there, and your child sees you and knows that you are working to protect them emotionally and mentally, not just protecting them physically from running out in the street, but protecting their heart and their mind by dealing with the source of however they got exposed to this. And then last but not least, it is absolutely important, so important, to not communicate with your child in a way that shames them, in a way that shuts down future communication, or makes them somehow feel that they are responsible or guilty for having been exposed to something outside of their control. What you want to do is talk to them about finding a clean conscience and feeling clean again. Because any child with an active sense of conscience is going to, even if they can't put it into words, is going to feel that there's something wrong with it. There's something shameful. And yes, I'm sweating. It is that hot in here. It's like 90 degrees in my house. So anyway, I'll deal with it if you can. You want to help them feel that clean conscience, that sense of being washed clean again, and keep having open, transparent conversations from now on. Do not let that lag by the wayside so that it all of a sudden gets, oh my goodness, my friend, I feel like one of those preachers is like mopping their head. So check out the books that I have called The Talk, Changes, The Story of Me, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, to take care of guiding you through those difficult conversations, to lay this foundation with your child and to keep those lines of communication open. If you have other children in the home, here's a big thing. When one child in a household stumbles on something pornographic or extremely inappropriate, if they are kind of drawn into that, very likely, well, kids will react one of two ways. Either that it'll go underground and they will keep it a total secret, or they'll be very scintillated by it because it's naturally enticing and they don't really understand it, and they will be sharing it, even possibly behind parents' backs, with other children in the home. So if this happens and you have other kids in the home, you've got to have open, frank conversations with the child who discovered the pornographic material or watched something online, and with the other children in age-appropriate ways, so that you're protecting all of them and not leaving the door open for it to only be addressed with the first child and overlooking the others. In addition to the books that are in the blog post about all the different resources for having sexual discussions, or discussions about sexuality, not sexual discussions, discussions about biblical sexuality and laying that foundation with children from a very young age, there's one more book that I want to tell you, and I will link also to this title, and it is called Sanctuary Light. One of the things that I think this is one of the best kids books out there for dealing with that gospel process of finding a clean conscience and feeling fresh, that your world is not spinning out of control, that the reassurance that you love Jesus, that Jesus loves you, that your life is not ruined at a young age, and to help a child relax again and feel like their world is right back up and right side up. And that book, Sanctuary Light, is a story. It's a chapter book about a little boy in ancient Israel, and I actually happen to be really good friends with the author, so I can personally vouch for it. I've read it to my kids, and it's about a little boy in ancient Israel who sins and then hides it, and then how he learns in practical ways about God's love and God's redemption for his heart because of how much Jesus loves him. It is not directly about sex. It doesn't have anything to do with pornography or sex, but it is absolutely relevant to helping small children up through like second grade all the way up through to teens and adults to feel clean again and to understand redemption, reconciliation, and the gospel. So those are my tips for dealing with a biblical response, a non-shaming, parentally loving, godly response when your child comes to you and says, oh my goodness, this is what I've seen. I don't know what to do with this information. Help me. So now you have tools in order to take action. If these were helpful, please like and share this video and leave me a comment, ask more questions. I'll be doing more videos, and I want to make sure that I am answering questions that you need to have answered. So if you can do that and just hit share and post it on your page, your profile, in your group, give it to other moms and dads, that would be so amazing, and that helps me be able to keep doing content like this. And I hope you have a really great rest of the weekend. Bye.